Now, to mark 100 years since the First World War next year, a group of history enthusiasts from Hertfordshire are tracing the stories of soldiers who gave their lives. Hearts at War are looking to create a final exhibition documenting the real footsteps of soldiers from all over the county. But to do that, they need your help. Dan Hill is part of the group, and Jon Grant is from Highfield School in Letchworth. John, I feel like I should say hello, sir, because you are head of history.
Indeed.
I always get slightly nervous when I have teachers in the studio. You're not going to put me in detention?
No, not today. Not today.
John, you made me chuckle, because what did your daughter think you were doing on the radio today?
She, when I told her, she said, "Are you going to be singing today, Daddy?" And she's heard me sing, so I laughed, and she said, "Please don't." Your
daughter has wonderful premonitory powers, because actually that's why we picked you to come in here today, because we'd like you to sing.
Okay.
What have you got lined up for us, John? How many listeners do you want me to lose over the next 10 seconds?
I think pretty much all of them.
Okay. We'll stick with what you know best. Not only do I normally get nervous when teachers are in the studio, I kind of get nervous with historians as well. Dan, you're a historian. If I may say, a very young historian. I think I was expecting you to be a little bit older. I love history, but I didn't love history at school. Does that sound like a contradiction in terms?
That sounds very similar to my exact understanding as well. Actually, as it happens, I'm an ex-pupil of the Highfield School.
Right.
So John wasn't there at the time, but I would have been one of his students at the time.
Well, what makes you a historian? What does a historian do?
Well, it's really just a love of history and wanting to find out about certain things. Particularly, my expertise is military history, so finding out about the First World War and generally conducting research into it.
Dan, I'm just going to ask you to come just a tiny bit closer to Mike. Thank you. That's brilliant. Before we come on to talk about this whole project, John, just give me a sense of how history is taught at school now, because I hated it. I hated it. I found it prosaic. I found it dull. I found it just very, very uninspiring. And yet here I am, 20 years later. I love history. Sure. Has the way we teach history changed?
Yes, massively. When I was at school, it was exactly how you described it.
Was that a bit around the time I was at school?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to say. But when we were at school, it was very much you sit down, you learn facts, and you have to regurgitate the information.
That's exactly what it was.
And now it's much more that you become an investigator, you become a historian, doing research, using evidence to try and work out various mysteries and solve various problems. And I feel, I don't want to be too political, but I feel at the moment we are almost being driven back towards the old style. And one of my colleagues from my training days and my current department would argue that we definitely need to fight to keep history the way it is now in the classroom.
Because anyone can learn a fact, can't they?
Definitely. It can be. I feel as though we're being driven to sort of pub quiz sort of style trivia, and what we really want to strive for is for students to be able to become independent thinkers, to want to be inquirers, and actually want to go and find out things for themselves. And I think history has become very popular in the media. And it is something that people are very interested in because it's presented very well on TV, on radio, and cinema.
Heritage, full stop. Yeah,
that's right. And I think with this project, we're trying to find a way that we can actually give people like yourself who maybe didn't have the best experience of history in school, but actually want to get involved. So it's a very good project that people won't just be sitting back to, but getting involved in.
And of course, nowadays we have all the tools we need to bring history to life. When we were at school, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers, we just had textbooks. Now, there are wonderful ways of you can almost transport yourself 100 years back. I would imagine in your class you probably do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's one of the wonderful things about being in a classroom is that students have something that most of us teachers don't have, which is an imagination. So we could sort of transport them mentally rather than having to transport them physically. But the one thing that I remember from being at school that really made me want to be a historian was actually going on a battlefield trip to France and Belgium when I was about 13 or 14, and actually being able to sort of physically walk around the site and feel like you're actually there and relive it was really special. So I'm hoping that this project will be able to do that for a lot of people in our local community.
And of course, I say this all the time on the programme, almost a distraction, but we are our history. Our history is all around us, our history from yesterday and our history from 100 years back. Dan, when did you become passionate about history?
For me, it's actually been one of those things that's always been an interest. I think it's always a good way to know that you really like something. You don't ever get pushed towards it. It's just something that's kind of ingrained into you. And with me, I've always had an interest in history, as far as I can remember, probably stemming back from my parents. And it's just something that's always been there. And as you say, with the new advances in technology, with things like the internet and the availability of records which weren't previously available, it's made it really tangible and very easy to become a historian.
Well, Dan and John need your help. They're involved in a project that is bringing to life the role that brave men and women from Hertfordshire played in the First World War. They need your help to create this exhibition. You can find out how and why. Ronan Keating, If Tomorrow Never Comes. Very interesting to learn of the incredible heritage that we have in Hertfordshire, of course in the three counties as well, but we're talking about Hertfordshire with Dan, Hill and Jon Grant, and that's why they're putting together this exhibition to pay tribute to the thousands of men from our county who lost their lives in the First World War. But they need your help. You can find out how right after this.
Original British drama on BBC One.
I don't know where I am. It's like I'm breaking into a million pieces and there's only one thing I remember. I have to save the Doctor. Sometimes I think I'm everywhere at once, running every second just to find him, just to save him.
Goodbye, Doctor. No.
I'm Clara Oswald. I'm the impossible girl. I was born to save the Doctor. Run, you clever boy, and remember me.
Doctor Who, the series finale, Saturday at 7 on BBC One and BBC One HD.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Nick Coffer.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Dan Hill and Sir, also known as Jon Grant. Dan, did your parents not realise when they called you Daniel that it would sort of sound like downhill? No,
No, it's you can call me Daniel if you like, which is my Christian name. So that's fine.
Probably what your mum still calls you, isn't it? So, this project, we've learned why you both love history so much. What is the project? What are you trying to do and why?
Well, basically the project it's quite simple in terms of its aims. What we want to do is just raise awareness of the First World War and the upcoming centenary throughout Hertfordshire and tell the stories of the county both at home and at war. Of course, there are many different aspects. Not only was it soldiers fighting away on the battlefields, but also there were things like Zeppelin raids in Hertfordshire where civilians killed on the ground, which are largely unknown today, and many different aspects, not only the soldiers but also people like conscientious objectors who had a very tough time deciding that they didn't want to fight and were effectively shunned by society. And we want to raise awareness of those kind of things and do the right thing by history standards as to remembering the centenary of the First World War.
Do we have any idea of numbers here, Dan? How many people from Hertfordshire went? How many came back?
Well, it's to be honest, it's something that's never really been collated until now, and it's one of our aims that we really want to do that. So, looking at Letchworth, for example, in North Herts, which is going to be our first port of call for our exhibition, we're focusing on the 143 men from Letchworth who were killed out of a town of approximately a size of 6,000 at the time. So it's a substantial amount. And we want to try and retell those individual stories. So it's not just a name that you see on the town's memorial, but we can actually put some meat to the bones, if you like, of those stories and find out each one's very individual and just raise the profile.
Why is it important to find out these individual stories, Dan? What are you honouring there?
It's I suppose that's an interesting question. When it comes to remembrance as a whole, I think it's something that we almost owe it because of the sacrifice that these people made. Regardless of whether we think it was a right or a wrong war, the end product was that these people went away and fought for their country, and in many cases paid the ultimate price. And we think it's just and the right thing to do to remember these individuals.
Here's me again with my patronising angle, for which I ask forgiveness before I ask it. But you're young. Why this desire to do it?
Someone's got to do it. Why not me? Why not us? We've got a different take, as you say. We are quite a young group, and we're aware that there are many groups in the county, not just us, that are working on various different aspects related to the First World War. But we've got a slightly different take in that we look at new ways of retelling history. things like using Twitter feeds to retweet in real time, day by day, the events as they occurred. So on the opening day of the war, in 2014, we'll be retweeting events from exactly 100 years to the day before that are relevant throughout the entire county. And using things like that and Facebook and various social media sites, we're going very well.
John, am I right in saying this is not only about looking for the stories of the people that went to war, but also looking at what it was like in Hertfordshire during the war? Who was doing what? Who was at school? Who was on the streets?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the really nice things that we've got here that, like we were talking earlier on about when you're learning about things in school. If you learned about the First World War when you were at school, it was very much what was it like to fight in the trenches, what were the experiences like, those sorts of things. And we're actually looking at what we call little picture history. We're looking at the lives of individuals, and by learning things in depth about small events and small people, for want of a better word, we're actually being informed about the big picture. So you can learn about the whole of the First World War by studying one individual town. And one of the nice things is it isn't just about who's in the trenches, it's about the whole town in this sense. Like Dan said a moment ago, we've got Letchworth had more conscientious objectors than anybody else anywhere else in the country, and it was seen as this sort of hotbed of socialism. And I think Letchworth proves to be a really interesting place for us to be able to start our project. So we've got people who are interested in society but not necessarily interested in warfare, who are still going to be able to get something out of this.
The two come together. I'm going to lay down the gauntlet to both of you here, because you were articulately saying that history is becoming slightly boring in the way we teach it at school. We're all about facts, right? Okay, bring this to life for me. Who have you discovered? Give me one story of somebody that can epitomise the work you're doing on the project. It doesn't have to be a named person, but just to give me a sense of...
Perhaps a good story would be the Hertfordshire Regiment on the 31st of July 1917, which is the opening day of a battle that's today known as Passchendaele. Very costly for the British Army. And the Hertfordshire Regiment was a one battalion unit. That means it was approximately 650 men who went into attack a town just north of a city called Ypres in Belgium on the 31st of July. They started the day with 620 men, and in the space of about 2 hours, they lost 459 of them, including all 20 officers that went over the top. And every single town in Hertfordshire lost at least one man that day. Most towns lost 3 or 4. St Albans lost over a dozen, and Letchworth lost, I believe, 9. So the stories that have come out from that day have been absolutely fantastic, and we want to really retell that. It's one of many tragedies that have been largely forgotten as a part of the picture of the First World War.
There's a few other sort of smaller stories, like I forget the name of the individual, but there were people who were regularly writing back to the local newspaper. So let's say that the Comet in North Herts, it was previously known, or the forerunner was the Citizen, and there were various soldiers writing to the newspaper to give updates about their experiences. And one man was writing back on a regular basis, 1914, 1915, just telling his story. And then suddenly in about 1917 there's a report that he committed suicide, and his name, as far as we're aware, isn't actually recorded on any of the war memorials in the local area. And with our research we want to be able to go and investigate how society would have seen shell shock or post-traumatic stress disorders, we would know it nowadays, and we actually recognise these things and would want to commemorate these people appropriately.
I was going to say, do you want to rectify the fact that he's not
Absolutely,
honoured?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this sort of notion of giving people recognition where maybe they haven't been acknowledged previously.
I'm sure that this is resonating with a lot of people, not only in Hertfordshire, but across the 3 counties. With this project in particular being focused on Hertfordshire, anyone who's got documents, memories that they want to share with you, what's the easiest way of doing so?
Fantastic. Yeah, we're more than happy to hear from anybody that's interested. The best way to speak to us at the moment is through our website, which is, in fact, as it happens, will be up and running within the next 2 or 3 days, which is heartsatwar.co.uk, or find us on Twitter @HeartsAtWar, or via our Facebook group of the same name. So
just do a search for Hearts at War on Facebook and it will take you there. In a couple of days' time, heartsatwar.co.uk, all the contact details will be on there, and you're looking for stories, anecdotes, documents, anything relating to Hertfordshire and the First World War.
Absolutely anything.
Dan, lovely to meet you, sir. Good to have you in the studio
Thank you very
too.
much.
Your pupils are very lucky. You're very passionate about history, and in particular about the way you teach it. And if you want to get involved, Hearts at War on Facebook and on Twitter and online as well. I think they would be very, very grateful for anything that you can offer: stories, anecdotes, memorabilia, or maybe you just want to get involved in the project. heartsatwar.co.uk.